All right, so we just finished doing a creature-specific non-destructive overlay layer to adjust the direction of the lighting on the creature. We already have that for the background, but we've only been focused on the creature and the lighting for the creature. We can also use this background non-destructive overlay layer to play with the lighting of the scene, right? So with burn, with a nice big mid-tone burn with a soft brush at less than 30% exposure, I can burn down maybe the shadows behind this boat so it feels like it's blocking light a little bit. And I can do what's called vignetting, which is very, very common in concept work to help you focus on the thing you want to focus on. And a vignetting is simply kind of darkening around the edges of the frame. Sometimes brightening, but in this case, darkening. So that, like, the warm pool of light that we care about is near the center. I want to know what all my things are doing. I want to understand that because I have lots of shadow layers now underneath. Okay, so all of that feels good and controlled. Now, in terms of internal compositing, it's only the brightest highlights on your creature that your non-destructive overlay layer can't affect, right? Because they're too bright for middle gray. So, in this case, I am going to take internal compositing from this non-destructive overlay layer, or I could do it from my creature itself, doesn't really matter. So duplicate, so now I just have the toes of the creature on their own layer. Then what I'm going to do with those toes is I'm going to say image adjustment levels, and I'm going to take down the highlights on them. Right? And I tend to overdo it a little bit. And you can see that left a little line there. So then I use my eraser at 100% opacity. And you can see the repetition of skills here to soften that hard edge. And then I take it at lower opacity, around 30. And I barely add them back in where I think they're needed. Okay, same thing with the shadows under the feet. I have those internally composited. And I can just use the eraser for things that are distracting, like shapes that are a little wrong. Or I can, in this case, build them up just a little bit stronger by doubling up those shadows with internal composites right where they touch. So duplicate, you see how that's a little bit darker. If I duplicate it again, it gets even darker, right? Then I can merge those together, and then I can soften them. So this is how you can kind of layer multiple shadows or deepen shadows. Okay, so now all that looks good and believable. What's next? Hit save. This meets the criteria of the proving ground, that first requirement, angling the anatomy to match, and then matching the lighting. So everything I'm doing now is just optimizing the lighting. I want to burn this a little bit, the ship itself, on the non-destructive overlay layer behind my creature so that that arm shows up a little bit better. And if I can only push that so far, then I might go to the layer itself and burn that a little bit. You see how much faster that is? So I'm going to go to an even more subtle exposure level, just so that arm shows up a little bit better. So just really directing the eye towards my creature. Again, not trying to hide my creature. trying to complement it in the scene. Same thing with this boat and those strong highlights. I can choose where I want to have them stand out. All right, all that's good. Now I'm going to add atmosphere. And this is my favorite, really simple technique. I'm just going to burn, let's see, a little bit on the shoulders here. So what we're missing usually when we do these kind of composites is we are missing the brush size. We are missing the actual quality of the air itself. And the quality of the air itself is the vapor. You know, is it the kind of temperature where you would see your breath? Is it really humid, right? Is it really dusty? Are there particulates in the air, right? Is there ash floating from a volcano eruption somewhere? Is there rain? That kind of thing. I'm not going to show literal rain because that would be something we would expect to be moving. That's like a figurative thing for the setting. But the one I like best, the most common thing I steal from Pixabay, even though it's Creative Commons open, we're going to have that discussion next, is clouds. So I'm going to look for clouds in Pixabay. I'm going to skip the ads, and I'm going to look for just photos and no AI, because I want real pixels, because then they can surprise us. And I want just a blanket of varied cloud texture. Something like this. Something like this. Something that looks like fog or mist rolling in. Even something dramatic like this. Any of these could work. Okay. So I'm going to download these. And they don't even need to be super high resolution. So you can get these from Google Images too, but what's nice about Pixabay is it's all Creative Commons open. Just don't be fooled by the sponsored content, because that will be watermarked and you're supposed to pay to be able to use that. Okay, now I'm going to go to the very top layer that's turned on. And then I'm going to go to my downloads and I'm going to drag and drop this cloud in. And I'm going to stretch it. If it doesn't already cover everything, I'm going to stretch it so it covers everything. And I can warp it. There we go. And it's still a smart object, so I'm going to rasterize it. And then so that I'm not holding a lot of pixels in memory I don't need, I'm going to crop it back down to its edges, because I just really stretched this thing out. All right, now this is the most basic way to use a texture overlay. You bring it in, and then you just take the opacity way down. And all of a sudden, it's like there's mist on the scene. It's like fog rolled in. Because that cloud mixes with everything. It's like a glazing over the top. There are other ways to use it as well. I can keep it at 100% and change its blending mode. One of my favorites is soft light. Right? You can see how that changes kind of the direction of the lighting. Kind of grounds everything a little bit. So what if I use soft light just in general at about 67%, then I duplicate it and I use it at normal mode at like 40%, right? Now I can use my eraser, really big, 100% opacity, or maybe let's say like 70% opacity. Really big though. And I can push the mist where I want it. I can push it away from my foreground. though it might still be a little heavy on the ground here. And even get into the boat a little bit. All right. But I'll keep it heavier in the background. But if it's too heavy, I can always go with a low opacity eraser and just kind of sweep it back. So that is the power of a texture overlay. And that, to me, really kind of brings it all together. Now, what if I wanted my creature to actually be exhaling this vapor? So I make a cloud of my creature, and then I internally composite that from the mist. I'm going to set it to 100%. I'm going to set it to normal mode, right? That's the vapor. Then I'm going to use my eraser at 100% opacity, soft edged, and trim it out. Just like a cast shadow underneath, this is now what my creature is exhaling. Right? And I want it to show up a little bit brighter. So I'm going to play with its levels. I'm going to brighten its midtones, dim its shadows, right? Have it coming out of the mouth, transform it, warp it a bit, so it feels like it's dissipating as it leaves his mouth. And then, of course, I need to move it behind my creature, and then I play with opacity, kind of building it up, right? Levels, because it got darkened underneath the other overlays. I want to brighten this up, so I'm going to take the highlights and brighten them. And then erase out the edges and kind of shape it, and just like a shadow, it gets softer as it leaves the source, as it leaves the mouth. Okay, so what if I want more of it built up right where the exhale is happening? I can duplicate it, internally composite, and then move that above the mouth, like so, right? And then I can soften that up and erase it out. These are texture overlays. They are composited in, they're part of compositing. They're raster and pixel based, but they are see-through, right? They're meant to augment every layer behind. And if you can do it in a non-destructive way, you can control all of these aspects. So I'm going to save my work. I've done everything I can for this component, right? The angle and the lighting and the atmosphere. And now I've really explored how my creature interacts with this environment, so I'm ready for the next parts. So if this is done, what do? I go to Image, Image Size, and I physically write down what its dimensions would be, what its physical dimensions would be for a print resolution, which would be 300 pixels per inch. So at 300 ppi, what would this be? I have to uncheck resample so the pixels are unchanged. They're set, and change the resolution to 300. And I'm going to write down that it is basically 20 inches by 13.5 inches, because I don't need to go to so many decimal points. Right? Now I ask myself, is 20 by 13 bigger than 8 by 10? And the answer is yes, it is. So that is what I'm going to use. But if the answer to that is no, my height and width when it's at 300 with its original pixels is not bigger than 8 by 10, then I change my resolution to 72 to screen resolution.